Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we're going back to my What I Eat in a Day series, but I'm only sharing with you the crème de la crème because these are my favorite things that I've made over the last month or so when working from home. So around 7:30 a.m. after I finish my workout, I usually have my first of 2 cups of coffee, and on a good day, it'll be a pour-over coffee. So you get to watch me do everything wrong because I haven't really perfected this art yet. I don't have a small mouth kettle or anything like that. I'm just using a regular kettle and a new Chemex, and I also didn't grind these beans myself either, but they are Hawaiian coffee beans. So far, the trick I've found is to just wet all of the grounds and get that bloom, and then just keep on going with a slow and steady stream, or as slow and steady as I can get it, with my beloved Smeg kettle. And then I combine half and half of the sweet cream creamer and whipping cream from Trader Joe's, and add that in at the end because I find that using the sweet cream only is a little bit too sweet for me. Another alternative I'll use is to mix cream and maple syrup and a little bit of vanilla extract for a homemade version where I can control the sweetness. Intuitively, I haven't been wanting breakfast at all the last few months, but I will snack on fruit throughout the morning. And the only reason I tend to have breakfast is that if I have a delicious baked good left over from the day before. But on this day I had something even better, which were some blackberries that I actually picked myself at one of my favorite little parks. So I'm having my second cup of coffee, which if I've really gotten into work is usually quickly made with my Nespresso or some more hot water over the same coffee grounds, because you can usually get a second cup of coffee out of the Chemex pour over as well. And then I'll continue snacking on some fruit throughout the morning, and on days I remember, I usually like to have my BioK as well, which is a probiotic that seems to agree fairly well with me. I've tried a bunch of different ones and didn't like most of them, but I like this combination because then I get a probiotic without having to eat a ton of yogurt if I don't feel like it, and a prebiotic from the fruit plus the fiber that's in that as well. For lunch, one of my favorite things, if you've seen my What I Eat in a Day videos before, is to have soup. So I thought I would try Daily Harvest, and no, this is not a sponsored video. They have no idea who I am. I ordered these when I was studying for the bar, and you're watching the very last 1 or 2 that I had in my freezer. And I honestly wouldn't say that I have loved it. It's been very convenient, but I'm dismayed at the lack of flavor as someone who loves to cook, and you know I'm such a foodie. I've had to add something to almost every single meal, but if you are in a bit of a panic mode when it comes to thinking of things to cook, I suppose it's a good thing for that, but a more affordable shortcut would be to just get some frozen vegetables, add some broth, and you have a quick, healthy, and delicious soup for probably a fraction of the price. Just my 2 cents. I also found that a lot of the meals weren't filling enough, and this isn't in particular to Daily Harvest at all. I think a lot of these kind of mail order frozen meals aren't enough sustenance if you are making it through most of the day. They're more of a snack than a full meal. So one thing that I've enjoyed doing whenever I do make them and I have a bit of time is to make a quesadilla to go with it. This quesadilla is so delicious. I really like the combination of pork salut and truffle cheese from Trader Joe's. It's such a good combination. It gets so creamy. Ideally, I would recommend prosciutto for this particular flavor combination, but I love those green figs from Trader Joe's. They're not too sweet, and a little bit of that hot honey gives you a savory sweet kind of vibe, and it makes just a wonderful accompaniment. This with like a roasted butternut squash soup would really knock your socks off, but I made do and did something quick with this leftover frozen soup, and you can see I added some broth and some Tabasco to kick the flavors and the acidity up a notch where I thought it needed it, which is, you know, something that's always good with food, to customize it to your own taste. I love this little Le Creuset. It's the perfect size, since I don't own a microwave, to make a little 1 or 2 batch portion of soup for lunches. So this was, I think, a curry cauliflower soup. It was pretty good. It had turmeric in it, which is really good for you and very warming, and it went okay with the quesadilla, and definitely that combination filled me up for the whole rest of the day until dinner, because of all the vegetables and how satisfying the quesadilla was as well. I find if I don't feel satisfied and like I've had something delicious, then I don't feel like it was a worthwhile work from home lunch day, because one of the treats of working from home is to be able to make a hot meal and have, you know, my whole fridge and kitchen at my disposal, and I've really enjoyed finding ways to get creative with that. So here's the end result of that. It's such a yummy combination. It's like a cheese board but in a quesadilla. Highly recommend. Fast forward 3 or 4 hours later, this is on the same day. One of my favorite things to do for dinner when I'm working from home is to make a stew. So I'll take a quick break to chop things up. Ideally, this would also be pre-chopped, but this isn't one of those days. And make a stew that can simmer away with very little attention from me. I can just kind of forget about it. And then you have a delicious dinner, and you can also eat that pretty quickly and go back to work after dinner if you do have some more work to do, which is often the case for me with my many hustles in life. So I'm chopping up some celery, some onion, all of the important things for a stew, but I really do love this particular recipe, and I had shown a previous version with pork, and I've now made a few tweaks. Today's will be with beef. I actually favor the pork a little bit more, but they're both very good. You can make this with any protein or even mushrooms if that floats your boat. But the secret is actually in this Delicata squash, which is the perfect work from home, quick to make stew, because you don't have to peel it. It's not a lot of work to chop it up. It doesn't have a ton of seeds either, so it's just really quick to process. And I absolutely love how creamy and thick it makes the stew while still holding its shape a little bit, because we're gonna leave the peel on. I'm also showing you one of my secret ingredients, which are these fresh green peppercorns. So if you like pepper, you will really like these. You might have had them in a green peppercorn sauce on a steak. They're those same kind of peppercorns, but I will be using peppercorns 2 ways in this stew, and along with the squash, it really gives you a special, slightly different result from, I think, any stew that you might have had before, which is why I was excited to share it with you. So here I am prepping my beef. Here's another trick. This isn't a trick that's unique to me, but if you velvet your protein, it will essentially thicken the stew for you over time, and I think the flavor and consistency of the stew is much better than if you thicken it at the end with something like cornstarch. So here I am chopping everything up some more. That's the only thing about stew. So much chopping, and you'll see I forget a key ingredient that, you know, no worries, since I'm here at home. I just added it about a half an hour in, so you'll see that in a second. But very important to brown your meat. If you are a proper chef, you would take the meat out. I am in way too much of a hurry to be doing that to get back to work, so I'm just stir frying everything together till it has a little bit of color and you've developed a little bit of a fond on the bottom, and then you want to add your liquid. I am adding some red wine. I do think it gives this stew an absolutely beautiful flavor, and I highly recommend using it, but you could use something like beef broth instead as well. So I add about a half a bottle of the wine. And then a quick tip that I really like is to always include 2 types of herbs in any soup or stew. So here I'm adding thyme at the beginning, and then you'll see I finish it with parsley. But you could also do like a dried oregano. Dried Greek oregano would be wonderful. So as not to overly complicate the flavors and really let the vegetables and all of the flavors that have melded together shine. But I do think herbs are very important and often overlooked, and so so that reminder to kind of use one at the beginning, one at the end works really well. So here I am adding the peppercorns, but I'm also going to add some dried peppercorns as well. These are rainbow peppercorns, and I know this seems strange, but it's a trick I picked up from Frank Princezzano on Instagram. I think he makes a beef stew or beef ragu that has whole dried peppercorns, and they really do soften over time and give you these wonderful little pops of pepper flavor when you end up, actually serving the stew at the end. So I use both, and I think this whole stew is basically a love letter to the squash and to the peppercorns. Those are really the star ingredients, and so everything else about it you could pretty much mix up. So we're gonna cook this for a long time until the squash actually pretty much half dissolves, so that the inside parts will have kind of melted into the sauce and really help to thicken it with its fibers, which is such a wonderful tool because it's healthy and good for you and delicious. And so I make sure to just mix everything up, and then I lower the heat and go back to work and forget about it, preferably for at least an hour before you come and worry about it. But I suddenly realized in between tasks that I did not add any carrots, which is a travesty. Every stew needs carrots, so I added some nicely chopped up carrots about a half an hour in, so you can kind of see a little glimpse of how it's doing in between, and then lowered the heat some more because it was on a little bit too high on a medium to really let it simmer. And then I did forget about it for about another solid hour, so this would have cooked for just over 2 hours total. And you can really see how thick and velvety it gets, even though I only thickened it formally in terms of stew techniques with that tiny little bit of flour for the velveting at the very beginning. I do like to serve this with noodles. This is one of my favorite brands of pasta to buy, and the trick for that I use is I cook the noodles, add a little bit of butter, a little pasta water, and a little parmesan to make it flavorful on its own, and then serve the stew on top of that. But you could serve it with anything and it would be delicious. After that, one of my favorite things to do is to light a candle at the end of the day. This is my favorite recent purchase, this little copper, it's real copper kettle candle. Smells like fresh apple cider. It's so wonderful and really beautiful on my coffee table as I continue working and making a to-do list for the next day, which is one of my very favorite habits to do to really get in a good place for my next work day, to foresee what I might be doing that day and what I need to get done. So this is the end of my day, and on a special day I will take the time to bake something delicious, which will not only be dessert but also serve as the possibility of a sweet and delicious breakfast. And I love making batches of cookies like this in the fall because I will freeze about 90% of the cookie dough. The trick for this one is all in the brown butter. If you've never browned butter for your cookies, you are missing out. You really taste the difference. It gives it such a wonderful hazelnut kind of taste, because in French it's called beurre noisette, so you're essentially browning it to create a nutty flavor. So these are pumpkin cookies made with the pumpkin butter from Trader Joe's, but you could use regular pumpkin or any other pumpkin butter as well, and it would work out fine. I love that they have oatmeal in them, so they feel a little bit more substantial and like something that you can really enjoy and chew on, and it's just that perfect warming, spicy, slightly spicy fall cookie served with a coffee or a cup of tea at the end of a long and productive day. I think is the perfect way to finish it off and give yourself a little self-love this fall season. So thank you so much for watching this What I Eat in a Day video, and come back and subscribe, turn on your notifications for my next installment on style.